Welcome to Hacking the Hustle. This is your host, Benji Sklar, and I'm really excited to have my friend Ariel Hoffman on the podcast today. What's up, Ariel?
Not much, man. How you doing, buddy?
I'm good. A little background on Ariel, or Ariel, however you want to pronounce it.
Ariel. You can call me Ari. You used to call me Ari, so let's just go with that.
Yeah. So Ari's based in Israel right now, and we know each other because we joined the Israeli army together. And Ari is from Florida originally, and he played college football at UCF as a walk-on running back, and then he joined the Special Forces in the IDF, and then actually had to stop his service because he was diagnosed with cancer. And he's a jacked former college football player running back in the special forces, so that was quite surprising and sad. And then post army he started a business with his brother in the sports fitness industry in Israel, training elite athletes. And now he's considering moving back to the United States, getting his MBA. And I really want to jump into all of these different sectors of his life and how they relate to you, the person who may be listening, about should I get an MBA? Should I start a small business? Should I move to a foreign country? And I feel like Ari has a lot of good insights in regards to all of those topics. So let's just dive right into it. Ari, what's going on? Tell us what it's like to be in Israel right now during the coronavirus, and what are you looking at?
Not a problem. So right now, Israel was pretty quick to act, and with this whole coronavirus. I've been basically in quarantine for like a month because I was outside of the country for a week, and the day before I came back, they put it guidelines that anyone entering the country has to go into a 2-week quarantine, and then I was in quarantine for 2 weeks, and then a day before I was supposed to get out of quarantine, they created these, the new guidelines ordered for a nationwide lockdown. So for the past month, I've basically just been inside, just, doing my
Yeah,
things,
totally.
relaxing. But yeah, no, it's crazy. Israel is usually a very, busy, constant traffic everywhere, and now it's like there's almost nobody on the roads. Everything's
Hmm.
empty, quiet. It's definitely not something you're used to.
Yeah, same here in New York.
Yeah, I'm
I'm sure
sure.
everywhere across the world. So let's
It's
jump into your starting a small business. Or you get out of the army and you decide to start a company. What was that process like? What are some? Tell us about that journey.
Oh, for sure, for sure. So for me, once I got out of the military, it was, I joined. We both came to Israel after we got our degrees, and so we were a little older than most of the kids who were joining the military at the time. For me, once I got out, I realized, most of my friends had been in the workforce for a couple of years now, and I wanted to kind of jump right into that and, catch up with them in a sense
Hmm.
and do something for myself. But that was very really important. I wanted to experience building something, a vision and building on that. And my brother, who also served in the military, went back to America after to get his master's degree in exercise physiology, had the idea of opening up a sports performance center. Essentially, in Israel, we saw that the sports community was lacking in essentially this type of business. Most athletes are training in normal commercial gyms, not getting any type of proper strength conditioning protocols and training regimens, and even the teams themselves don't have any weight rooms, aren't providing them with any type of training. So we kind of recognized an opening in the market and decided to kind of pioneer this. Is essentially this American culture of strength conditioning. For us, the business that we built is you see it in every city in America, whereas we were
Hmm.
the first of its kind here in Israel.
Hmm.
And so like that was the main motivation of really like the continuation of our beliefs and like trying to give to the country, both initially in serving in the military, and now in trying to progress the sports world here,
Hmm.
the athletes in Israel. So it was like both for obviously a business, get business experience of being owners, running a business, and also to try and give back to the country.
It's nice. You said something really interesting where you felt like you were behind your friends getting out of the army. Like they had work experience and you didn't. And I felt the same way. I felt like
Yeah.
I was 2.5 years behind all of my friends who were working. And I kind of like shot myself in the foot by serving in the army. And then
Hmm.
everyone says, "What are you talking about? You served. That's so honorable. You learned the great lessons like discipline and working for talking about a huge organization of 500,000 employees. It's a lot bigger
Hmm.
than just a company with 500. So, but I didn't think of it like that at all. I felt like I was just like in the forest, in the woods somewhere, sleeping on a yoga mat, practicing training drills, not
Sleeping in the
really,
rain under a tree.
yeah, not really learning how to be a businessman. So I feel like that,
Yeah,
like the world has like this misconstrued perception of what it really means to serve in the army. What was your
100%.
army experience like, being in the special
For me,
forces and?
for me, first of all, like serving in the unit that I served in was incredible. In my experience with the guys that I served with, I'm to this day, even though I was released early, I was medically discharged early. I'm still very close to the other guys in my unit. Obviously, it was probably like the best thing, the best statement to like sum up the military. Especially like I heard this even before I joined, is it's the best experience that you never want to go through again.
Yeah, that's funny.
Because like you a lot of the things that you go through at the time they suck and like
Hmm.
you are just hating your life, but after it's kind of like, all right, like you can laugh at it, you can, it's memories that you have with guys who that just like you'll say it lasts you a lifetime, and nobody who anyone who hasn't gone through it will never understand.
Yeah.
It's an experience like that really teaches you a lot about yourself. For me at least, it allowed me to kind of uh, like kind of analyze myself, like a lot of self-reflection. I was able to look at myself,
Hmm.
understand like what 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 makes me go crazy, what I
Hmm.
need to kind of like improve on. And for me in the military, you're reliant on everyone's relying on you. Like you're only as good as your weakest team member.
Hmm.
And
I like how you
so
said like it's something that you don't want to go through again, but you're happy you did it. I feel like
yeah.
law school is the same. Like while you're doing it, it's tough and it sucks and it's hard. But after you're gonna, I know I'm gonna be really grateful for all the things
For
I've
sure.
learned, and it's same as like any military experience I can imagine.
No,
But
yeah, exactly. I think it's like real quick. I just think like in most things in life, I feel like it's hard to kind of like get a perspective on what you're learning, what you're gaining from that specific experience. It's only
yeah.
after the fact that it's easy to kind of look back and understand what benefits it provided you.
Totally. So for you, now that you're considering moving back to the US, what benefits did you get out of starting a fitness business?
So for me, in the business side of like in creating the business, obviously because of my background and I have my degree, my bachelor's in exercise science, and obviously being a former athlete, and my dad is also has his PhD in exercise physiology, so it's kind of like a family thing.
Hmm.
But I had the experience of being able to train. But my main focus, my main interest in starting the business was the business development and essentially helping the business grow. So although I was training, my main focus was, increasing our sales, creating the marketing strategies, creating partnerships, whether it be, we had relationships with the Ministry of Defense. We worked with the Wingate Institute, different various professional soccer clubs. So the motivation for me in creating the business was really to get that experience of and to increase my business acumen and have an understanding of the struggles that it takes to make it small time in a sense, because obviously
Yeah.
I'm a small business owner, and we have our limits to what we can reach. And so my experience in growing up my business from nothing to almost 3,000 square meter facility with four trainers training under me, and training athletes from professional soccer players to the world champion in Muay Thai, to like Israel's number 2 ranked tennis player. So it's really like expanding the business is something that really motivated me in doing this, in embarking on this journey. And now for like the reason why I'm going for my MBA is I was looking for my next challenge.
Hmm.
I'm really I really believe it's important to continue to challenge yourself, and to try and like improve on on who you are. And I believe that getting my MBA will kind of provide me with the right opportunity to essentially challenge my my abilities on a larger scale.
Hmm.
Going into corporate America and dealing with a larger population and a much more things at stake.
Hmm. What makes you want to go get an MBA rather than go work for a company or start your own new company and go back into the education system in the
So one of
traditional
the
sense?
so that's one of like the I think that I've been battling with that
Hmm.
lately. Like the idea of going into like trying either management consulting or a tech company like AWS or Google or whatever. And I'm looking at that like I'm 28 years old, and if I were to go there, if they look at my CV, although I have a decent background in starting my own business, most likely will go enter into an analyst role, which is a entry level position. And I look at the benefits of getting my MBA, at least at a top university, will offer me the opportunities to come in at a higher level, and really kind of also provide me with a good transition from someone who doesn't have any business background in the sense of like a formal education, to get some certain things that potentially were missing from. Obviously, I gained a lot from doing, but there's also a lot of technical things that I could learn and that I can improve on that the MBA could provide me, in addition to opening up doors for various job opportunities.
Yeah, I hear you, and it's very reasonable to believe that. I took the GRE, applied to one business school called Baruch College in Manhattan, which is a state
Okay.
city school, and was accepted and enrolled into one class called Business Communications, and I dropped out after it because was just rolling my eyes the whole time while I was there. I was,
Really?
yeah, because I was in the middle of starting Forage, which is my startup, and
Yeah.
and then so I'm like working all day on actual business operations, trying to figure out how to grow this thing, and then I go to class at night and sit in a room with this older woman and 15 other students, all like kind of like scrolling on Facebook on the computers while she's showing a PowerPoint presentation about like how to communicate in today's business environment. And I was just like, this is so irrelevant. Like, I'm not learning anything. I could watch YouTube videos to get lessons
Yeah.
from Bill Gates and Warren Buffett, not this random woman. And I quit and I didn't go back. And I would say 99% of the people who know me don't even know that happened, even though those close to me. And
Yeah.
so like I have like a firsthand experience of actually applying, spending all those hours studying for the
Mhm.
GRE and applications, and then pulled the plug. I wanted to get the
That's interesting.
JD MBA, and then I said, you know what, it's not worth it. I'd rather like get the real world business experience. And so,
Yeah. I think it also depends on like what your goal is. I mean, as someone who like if I currently had some kind of like startup idea, yeah, I wouldn't go get my MBA. I would
mhm,
most likely focus on developing that and you know uh trying to trying to raise some funds and develop increase my understanding of the business world through
mhm,
action. But for me, obviously the opportunities that you can get provided with an MBA at a top program, in regards to whether you want to go into management consulting or one of those top corporations at an associate level role.
mhm.
I think that's like it depends on what your goal is.
Yeah.
It really depends
Well,
on what your
here's
overall
a
goal is.
challenge. What if you don't get into a top program? I thought I was going to get into Harvard Law School, and I ended up at Brooklyn Law School. I thought I was going to get into Harvard
Yeah,
MBA, and I didn't get accepted. Like, and so
yeah,
like I got slapped in the face with a reality check. Like, hey Benji, your scores aren't good enough to get into the top 15 law schools. What are you going to do? Are you going to go to law school, or are
yeah,
you just going to not because of everyone's opinion that you can only go to a top school? You should only go to law school or business school if you get into a top school, which means they're really saying the education doesn't matter what you're going to learn. It matters the
The
brand that you
name.
put on your resume
Yeah.
and the people that you network. So
No,
it's like really thinking about like what am I really trying to get? Is it the brand? Is it like this, or is it the knowledge about how to run Facebook ads and how to write a business plan, how to run a DCF model, and how to run statistics and accounting and all the things that actually you can learn online for free.
that's a good point. That's a good point. It's one of the things. That's why I haven't kind of, I'm not saying. I was saying before, I'm kind of like battling with those two ideas of whether I want to go into the, attempt to go into the workforce and really kind of, you know, go that route and just trying to work my way up. And it's
Mhm.
something because, like, obviously, you going that route essentially provides me with the opportunity to not be in debt.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
I don't have currently I don't have any student debts from my
Mhm.
undergrad time. I don't have any debt whatsoever, and so like it's definitely a question of what kind of like a cost benefit analysis of what
Yeah. Huge. Huge.
of what, and that's what I
Yeah.
need to do.
Yeah, like I fortunately got a great scholarship from law school, so I don't have any student debts. But my classmates,
Oh,
my
that's
my
great.
closest friends, they're already like 150 grand in debt, and
Wow.
it really is daunting to think about how they're going to pay that off when you're making 60, 70 grand a year at plus
That's it.
interest. It's like even if they're making 200 grand a year, it's going to take 40 years, and so like I just I'm not the right person to be the voice on your shoulder, being like, go to get an MBA. I'm the
Yeah,
opposite. I'm the guy who says don't go to an MBA. But who the hell am I? It's not like I've sold a successful business and like worked at a Fortune 500. I'm just Joe Schmo. But that's just like
yeah.
from my personal life
No,
experiences.
I think it's definitely like it's definitely something that I've been thinking about. I've been going back and forth. Like I have like my one best friend who works with Deloitte, management consulting, and
Hmm.
he got a job with them right out of Penn State. And then I think about 2 or 3 years into working for them, he ended up going to get his MBA, and they paid for it.
Yeah.
And it was just like obviously that's like the most ideal situation ever because
Yeah.
you're going to a top program. He went to Kellogg, so he went to like like
Hmm.
one of the top. I think the number one for the 1 year
Hmm.
MBA.
I know, but
And
like, what
so
do you
that
like? You can't bet on your company
exactly,
paying for your MBA, and
exactly.
and like, what is the even goal of getting an MBA? Is it to get a job, or is it to appease the chip on your shoulder and the voices in your head that told you you can only be successful if you have an MBA?
So it's one of the things I'm kind of battling right now with myself. Like, do I want should I put in the time and get the actual work experience? Because that's essentially what matters the most. If I want to like
Hmm.
climb the ladder, is getting that experience, or do I want to kind of walk the party line in a sense
Hmm.
and do as others have done,
Yeah.
just to get that to check that box off and say that I have that name if I even get it.
Yeah.
Obviously
Yeah.
right now
Mhm.
I'm studying for the GMATs right now, but it's
I hear you. Like my
it's a
brother
struggle.
and my brother David Sklar and my cousin Jeffrey Derbyshire, they both are quote unquote successful businessmen in their late 20s, early 30s, like with top of the top jobs. And they didn't get their MBAs, and they always are like, at least in my opinion, anti MBA, because if they got their MBAs, they would have to leave the opportunities that they already have to go work for 2 years. And so it's like, how do
Yeah.
you position yourself? I guess people who already have good jobs don't want to leave to get their
Hmm.
MBA. But then I have my father's voice in the back of my head who's like, Benji, like, if you don't get a graduate, like, if you want to be successful, you have to get an MBA. Because when you look at all the CEOs of Fortune 500s and you look at their bios, it says BA, and then it has under it MBA. And if you want to be one of those
Yeah.
people, you have to put in that time. But it's exhausting to live your life based on other people's opinions.
That's
It's exhausting.
and that's one of the things for me right now. I'm actually working on a essential kind of like self analysis for myself. I'm kind
Hmm.
of like doing like really like understanding what I've done up until this point in my life, and kind of trying to picture myself, 10 years from now.
Hmm.
And so I'm trying to like create a picture of where I want to be 10 years from now, and then kind of work backwards from that. And that's
Mhm.
essentially like the mindset that I'm in right now, to try and kind of figure out, like you're saying, try and essentially block out all the noise from the outside, because I'm also hearing stuff from like my parents and my
Mhm.
friends, and obviously advice from professionals.
Mhm.
So I need to. I feel like it's important to obviously take into consideration what people are, or the advice that you're getting from individuals, but at
Mhm.
the same time, it's also important to understand or try and figure out what exactly it is that you want to shoot for and aim for,
Yeah,
and I think that
100%.
that's what I'm focused on right now.
It's interesting to hear that like you're getting advice from other professionals. When everyone's biased and like if someone asks me, "Hey Benji, should I go to the IDF? Should I go to Amherst College? Should I like start?" I'm just gonna say yes because I did it, even though
Yeah.
I regret it or I wish I didn't do it or I did something different. I'm just gonna say yes, you should do that, really to make me feel better for
Hmm.
what I did. So when people are giving
I'm
advice,
like, yeah,
I feel
yeah.
like they really just push people to appease their own doubts, their own insecurities.
Like confirm the decisions that they made in the past.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get that's a good. That's an interesting point. That's an interesting point. Because like a lot of times, well, I really depend. I really feel like it depends on like who you're speaking to as well. I feel like if someone's like really like lacks the confidence in their past decisions and is self-conscious about certain things, and they'd be definitely that would definitely like affect them.
Hmm.
Um, but like for instance, I have like my sister who is been in the professional. She worked for 5 years at PwC in Manhattan.
Hmm.
Then made Aliyah and started working for AWS, Amazon in
Hmm.
Israel. Now she's living in Madrid, as she's like a manager, like a senior manager in Madrid. Kicking ass, and
Hmm.
at the same time, she's providing me. I understood like the struggles that she's been through, and she doesn't make it out to be like the greatest possible job ever.
Yeah.
She understood. She kind of when I speak to her about going into corporate America, or in a sense working for like one of those top
Hmm.
companies, it's an understanding that like you're working long hours, you're not necessarily going to enjoy what you're doing, you're not necessarily enjoy who you're working for, um, and so I'm also getting the other side of that, from the advice from other people.
Yeah.
Um,
That's really good insight to see like people who you think have the dream job, who you aspire to be, that you're jealous of, and then
mhm,
they are transparent with you and they show you their true colors of what's really going on under the hood. Everyone's
mhm,
dealing with shit. Like I bet if you ask Donald Trump or Miley Cyrus, Katy Perry, Usher, like all these people who you think are awesome and have the best life because they live in mansions and are famous,
mhm,
they're all dealing with shit. They all have issues. No one,
yeah,
and like for based off my own experience, I feel like the people who are actually the happiest, they could be making 50 grand a year. And they don't need to be making a lot of money as long as they're doing what makes them happy and like they're living their best life. And I feel like a lot of those people are people who figured out how to buy and sell real estate properties. Like I feel like the
really,
people who are really happy in this world have figured out how to earn passive income by buying real estate
okay.
and like making money off of rent. Like they're the landlords. And
I'll give you another perspective for that.
mhm,
I feel like a lot of times, a lot of like people chase happiness. But I do believe that happiness can be fleeting. It comes and goes at different times, and
mhm,
depending on like what's going on in your current state. I believe that and this is things that I've learned from listening to Jordan Peterson and things like that, and reading his
mhm.
books, and
I don't know who that
different
is.
other people's. Like, Jordan Peterson is a clinical psychologist that came to the spotlight a few years back.
Hmm.
But he's a really interesting individual. I'd recommend you check him
I will.
out. Got a great podcast, but he talks about like kind of like your search for your search for meaning.
Hmm.
Trying to find meaning in what you do, and I think essentially for that, I look at that as like the byproduct of searching for meaning and finding it in what you're doing in life, whether it be your work or the things that you do after work, whatever it is in your life that you find that gives you meaning. That the byproduct of that is what's going to produce the happiness.
Hmm.
So I'm not saying you can be the garbage man. I doubt that they love picking up garbage, but
Hmm.
that doesn't mean that they're not happy.
Yeah.
They may not like exactly being a garbage man, but they're getting paid pretty well, and they
Hmm.
might find other other meaningful acts in their lives that,
Yeah. So
that
it's so
fulfills
hard.
them.
Like, how do you define happiness, and what is like meaning? Like for me, I'm working on Forage. I'm in law school. Why the hell am I even doing this? What
Yeah,
is the meaning behind it? Am I trying to bring people together? Like in reality, I'm trying to build a business that generates revenue so that I can pay myself a salary and have savings so that I can buy a house so that I can relax on the couch with my family. And that's already what I'm doing right now in self quarantine.
exactly. Yeah, it's so funny that you said that. It's so funny that you say that. It's like we work to get to a certain point, so at the end of the road, we can go back to doing what we were doing before we actually worked all that
Yeah.
time.
It's because of a society that tells us we have to be on the rat race and be productive members of society so that we can like feel that self-worth.
Yeah, no, you're right. That's a good point because like honestly, like and that's why it's so important to really try and like find the things in life that like really are, whether it's meaningful or that you enjoy. And obviously, I think the most important thing in life is time. Time's the
Mm-hmm.
most valuable thing in the world, and so like the way you choose to spend the time is really important.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it be like,
How did getting diagnosed with cancer impact your perception of time?
that was interesting. I mean, like it definitely, I was unexpected. Like I
Mm-hmm.
was right at the end of my training. I was about to get my final pin, finishing the end of training for my
Mm-hmm.
unit, and they hit me with that. And for me, it was kind of like it was like a reality, like a hit of reality. Like this is life. You
Mm-hmm.
can actually die.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I mean, like for me, I don't know why, but for some reason, I from the beginning, I was never scared. For some
Mm-hmm.
reason, I don't know why I had the confidence I'd be fine,
Mm-hmm.
and so like I was able to kind of like look at this like I looked at everything else in life. As a football player, we're constantly faced with like things and constantly hammered into our heads to persevere and overcome the obstacles that we face. And so that's essentially how I tackled the
Mm-hmm.
everything with the cancer.
It was in your
But
neck?
it was out of thyroid cancer right here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So they, so obviously like it was for me like as soon as I was like a week and a half after I was diagnosed, I had to get surgery because it was pretty advanced. But and then the road, like that wasn't even the hardest part. The hardest part wasn't like the week that I spent in the hospital. It was really the 6 months after that of like hormones unbalanced.
Mm-hmm.
Your mind just going like not being able to sleep, not being able to concentrate. So there's a lot of different types of psychological effects that it had on me, that really kind of led me towards a lot of like the self reflection type part in my
Mm-hmm.
life. And I started like looking back and a lot of the things that I've done, decisions that I've made, and the biggest impact for me is that it's essentially like kind of trying to not waste any time in a sense of self improvement and what I'm doing with my life.
Mm-hmm. Nice. I feel like that ties in well with what we've been talking about these last 20 minutes. Like
Yeah,
asking yourself these questions that people don't like. I feel like the world tells you not to ask yourself. Like
yeah.
don't ask what's really my best self-interest. Just go along with the plan that everyone's
Mhm.
telling you to go with. Like getting like these degrees and playing going along with this. It's interesting to me to like paint to you like, yo, don't get an MBA, go start your own company. When you did start your own company, you already did it. So it's not like you don't have that experience. Like you did it, and I can't imagine how hard it was being an American, being in Israel and dealing with all the legal issues and taxes and
Yeah.
can you
No,
tell me about that?
no, starting a business in Israel is one of the hardest things ever. I truly believe that if you can successfully, run a business in Israel, you can run a business, anywhere in America. Uh,
I believe
the
that.
bureaucrat, like obviously there's bureaucracy everywhere, and America is, has no shortage of bureaucracy. But in Israel, it's extremely frustrating, having to go through the different barriers that they have in place that are just essentially make it easy for the big name companies to kind of deal with everything, but the small businesses kind of fall through the cracks in a lot of the things. And the amount that you have to work in Israel to really make a difference in regards to an impact in revenue is exorbitant, because we have 17% is, VAT, goes
Mhm.
to everything. 17% of everything we make goes to the government.
Mhm.
And so, and then take the rest of the 83% and take 25% of that, of the profits, goes to corporate tax.
Wow.
So
Yeah, that's
you know
crazy.
you have a lot. The expenses are really high, so you have to really get creative with lowering your expenses,
Mhm.
and making it so that you can, pay yourself, and pay your workers, and expand the business.
Mhm.
We went from having zero, and also like the Israeli mentality, the personalities, like, the thing, what we're doing is is not common. Like, and obviously in America, it's our culture is all about, like, getting in the weight room at an early age, and training. Football teams are constant.
Mhm.
It's the biggest number one sport. People are training from an early age. Whereas in Israel, they're still like 30 years behind where America used to be, where they still think that training as a kid will stunt your growth, and that's like
Mhm.
scientifically has been disproven.
Mhm.
Um, and so a lot of the time, what like a lot of the struggles is also changing the mentality of the Israeli customer.
Mhm.
And once we actually get the Israeli athlete in the facility, they're still they've been taught a certain way their whole lives. Like
Mhm.
the Israeli coaches are constantly putting, shoving down their throats the idea of overtraining. So they get to the
Mhm.
point where they're constantly saying, "Don't overtrain, don't overtrain." So they're barely even training. So they actually end up being undertrained because they're
Mhm.
not actually doing enough training. So the struggles of this specific business is the education, educating
Mhm.
the athletes, educating the parents, and educating the coaches. The
Mhm.
next part is obviously getting them in,
Yeah.
and having them pay a fee that's going to be able to justify our existence.
Mhm.
Um, and then from there, just expanding to different avenues. So we started off with, like, obviously we barely had a budget for marketing. We
Mhm.
kind of just hustled our way. I slid into the DMs of many players, and one on
Amazing.
one,
Yeah, it's awesome.
inviting guys to the facility, and then, like, from there a few guys came, and word of mouth helped, and that expanded our business. And then we kind of saw an opportunity with also the trainers in
Mhm.
Israel.
Mhm.
And one of the opportunities we saw is creating a strength and conditioning course that's geared towards for trainers to understanding how to work with athletes, because Wingate has its course, but it teaches trainers how to work with the general population, which is completely different than how to train athletes. So
Mhm.
those are two main aspects of the business that we kind of established and expanded as the time went on. And although it hasn't been easy, because obviously again, the Israeli population, the Israeli culture
Mhm.
is very difficult, and the
Yeah.
personalities are
Yeah.
much stronger. Whereas in America,
Mhm.
the athletes are just kind of like, you tell them what to do, and they'll do it. There's
Mhm.
no questions asked.
Hmm. I want to say I salute you for being a trailblazer, bringing this athlete mindset to Israel. I bet most countries besides the United States don't have that mindset of elite performance, elite training, unless they're Olympic teams or these like they're pro teams. It's
Yeah.
interesting to hear like how on this podcast we've talked about how America pushes us to get degrees and get high-paying jobs to be happy and live the American dream. I wonder how every single country, I don't know how many there are, like 270 countries on the planet, how every country has its own narrative of like, to be happy in
Yeah.
our society, you need to do X, Y, and Z. And like
Hmm.
how they're, and like everyone's right. And everyone thinks they're right. Everyone thinks everyone else is wrong. And we're all just like, uh, victims to our like to the society that we live in.
Society, yeah, no,
Yeah.
100%. No, it's interesting. I feel like the best thing to potentially do is try and take the best out of every single society and every single culture as much as you can. I mean, obviously, you can only do that as to what you're exposed to, and obviously, me and you have been exposed to Israeli culture and American culture for the most part. And I
Hmm.
know you have Mexican family as well, so
Yeah.
there's a
What do
little
you
bit of
think
that.
is the difference between an American and an Israeli who is the exact same age, exact same like build, style, personality?
Let's say one word: chutzpah.
You think so?
Honestly, like the typical Israeli will have no problem in even if he's not qualified, like, they don't mind taking risks. They'll put themselves out there and take the chance of being shut down.
Hmm.
Whereas an American might kind of be like kind of hesitant to kind of take an opportunity, or actually no, sorry, let me rephrase that. An Israeli will make his own opportunity in a
Hmm.
lot of ways. Whereas I feel like oftentimes Americans wait for the opportunities or go
Hmm.
according to what the society expects them to do. Like
Hmm.
go get your MBA,
Hmm.
whereas and then get a high paying job. Whereas in Israel, they'll try and go get the high paying job without the MBA.
Hmm. Yeah, I feel like Israelis pre-army respect Americans, see them on a pedestal because of the movies and culture,
Yeah,
where like Americans are from a better world country, and then they join the army, and then they realize that the Americans who serve in the units with them, like me and you, were just the same Joe schmoes like they are, and they're like,
100%.
oh, okay, like I guess America isn't that good because this guy could be living in New York going to a nightclub, but here he is like eating tuna out of a tuna can in the middle of nowhere with me. And so, and then they go on their 8-month trip to South America, India, Thailand, and they live their best life and they party and do drugs and they go crazy. And then,
Yeah,
they realize like, oh, like I don't want to. I'm doing me. I don't need to go to America. And they drop their whole America's my next step. Uh,
no, for sure.
in their narrative. It's interesting.
No, for sure.
I thought of this business idea of creating a travel agency specifically targeting post IDF soldiers, because it's part of their culture in Israel to get out of the army and go on your vacation.
Yeah,
But there's no
yeah, it's
travel
a huge
agents.
thing.
There's no travel agency just specifically designed to support that. And so I feel like
True.
that there's a great market right there.
There's a market for it every year. It's consistent, soldiers making
Yeah,
making all their money and then wasting it all on a trip. That's
yeah.
one of the things that I didn't do. I was kind of I was just like whatever. I'm gonna be in I'm gonna be in the the medical discharge right now, but I'm gonna start working on my own business. What I'm gonna do after.
Hmm.
I'm gonna take. I should have taken some time to kind of like relax, go go see some sights.
Me too, man.
Have a few drinks, and then start my way.
Yeah, I went straight into working for a Green Sabar, trying to raise money for lone
Yeah.
soldiers. I wish I spent a year living in a tent in the Philippines. You know?
Well, we'll just do it the latter parts of our lives. Eventually, it'll happen.
Yeah. It's funny how people, like, there's always that one friend of yours who's from high school who's like currently living in Thailand right now, like being a bartender or doing something like that. And then all the parents are like, "Oh, Jack, like what a failure, what a misfit that he's
And he's
doing
loving his
that."
life.
And then everyone wants to do that at some point in their life, and for some reason we put that down because they're not like what they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing, whatever that means. It's
Ah, it's interesting. It's
yeah,
funny. It's definitely life's an interesting journey. I feel like you got to find the right journey for yourself, and then just make sure you enjoy every moment of it because it goes by quickly.
yeah. It's interesting for me to self-reflect and hear me like I'm constantly like shitting on the system, like hating on it. And I guess I've
You're part
dealt.
of it right now.
Yeah, I'm part of it. I've dealt with it. I'm like angry at it, and it's interesting that it's like one of my themes right now. I'm like attacking how things are, which I need
No,
to
for
work on,
sure.
I guess. So, yo, this was an amazing podcast. I had
Yeah.
no idea it was gonna go like this. I was expecting we were gonna be talking about completely different topics, but but I loved how it ended up. And
Yeah, it was amazing. I enjoyed it.
Thank you very much for the time.
Take care. Take care. Thanks for having me, bud.
All right, see you, Ariel. Thanks a lot.
All right, take it easy.
See
Okay,
ya.
bye.